Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And I feel like today's topic is a doozy of a one, because let's face it, every single one of us deals with this sometimes on a daily basis. Girl, I want to talk about stress. So my special guest today is Courtney Elmer, and she's a lifestyle strategist, speaker, and a stress expert dedicated to showing overwhelmed mompreneurs how to stress less and live more. Well, this girl has overcome cancer at the age of 25 and realized that life is way too short to waste any time feeling stressed, overwhelmed, and or burnt out. She specializes in showing working moms how to create order out of chaos so that they can feel clear, focused, and in control of their life and business without sacrificing their family along the way. I'd like to talk about that for sure. She's also the founder of the Stress Less system, which we'll go into in a little bit. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast today, Courtney Elmer. Hey, Courtney.
Hey, Mary. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat with you today.
So this is the real deal. Stress is unavoidable, right? I mean, there are things that happen, especially if you're a parent, where you're like, wow, I'm doing great. It's all happening. I'm doing the thing. And then your kid throws up, or then you get a flat tire, or then one of your major clients pulls the plug. I mean, these things happen, right? So How does stress show up for you in your life right now?
Awesome question. For me, stress is always a warning sign. It's always a signal that something is not right. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that's been really the biggest aha for me and my whole journey to stress less and live more, as I love to say, my personal motto. And that is something that I pay a lot of attention to. So to give you a very concrete example, this past week I'm prepping for a launch of a new upcoming course. And of course, when you go into launch mode, there's a lot of extra that comes on the plate that is just not typical in the day-to-day business stuff, right? You know, new email sequences to write and just whatever the things are that you've got to get done. And so I've had all that on my plate, the past couple of weeks. And I have noticed myself feeling more anxious than normal, feeling more pressure than I typically do. And because I'm not immune to stress either. We're not supposed to be. We're humans. We're supposed to feel it.
Right.
And but doing the work I do in the world and knowing that stress is an indicator and stress is always indicating something deeper, I'm able to look at it and say, okay, where can I pull back a little bit? What needs to be adjusted? What needs to be modified? So that way, I know how to handle it and how to approach it and how to not let it just overwhelm me, and feel like, oh my gosh, now I don't know what to focus on or what to do next because I'm so overwhelmed and now I'm stuck and now it's just like all going to come crashing down, and this kind of worst case scenario thinking that we sometimes automatically go into when we're feeling stress and we're feeling pressure.
Totally. And it sounds like to me, it's a process of kind of almost on a daily basis, taking a bit of an inventory. What are the signs that you're feeling and seeing physically, mentally, spiritually? Like for you, I mean, do you find that there are warning signs or that you're about to have a massive wake-up call in your life?
Yes. Something for me personally, it shows up in my body in headaches. I'll get headaches. And anytime I start to notice myself getting one of those, I get them much less frequently than I ever used to. Used to be, it was like a migraine every other week, it seemed, in my life, and then that's so debilitating, it'd knock you out for a few days. Now I notice when they start to come on, it's more of like a tension kind of builds up in my shoulders. And then, you start to feel that headache pain. And immediately, I know as soon as I start to feel the tension now that it's like, okay, wait, what do I need to shift? What do I need to do a little bit differently? Or where do I need to pull back and just ask for more help or get more support so that pressure is not on me. And that way I can manage, through it.
Mm-hmm. And, one of our past guests that we've had on the podcast is Carly Polak, and she's a nutritionist. And she said also, what you see on your plate is a very much an indicator of your current state as well. So I think as humans, when we get really stressed and we get really overwhelmed, it's like, well, I just want to hit the big red F it button and eat donuts and fried chicken and just numb the stress away, right?
Yes, yes. And that's so interesting that you bring that up because for me too, having overcome cancer at such a young age, that also has really tuned me into just my own nutrition and how well am I taking care of myself and my body. And so for me personally, I even notice that, when I am feeling more stressed, it's easy to go pour an extra cup of coffee or let me reach for the sugar or,
Yeah.
just something to kind of keep fueling. And I think this is something I notice so often with the mompreneurs I work with is they're just trying to make it through the day. And they're just trying to get as much done as possible on their list while putting out all the fires that are coming up, family, like you said, the kid throws up or whatever might happen. And so taking care of themselves in order to function well is often on the back burner. And that's a struggle. That's a huge struggle, but you're right. You have to think about it backwards. When I'm taking care of myself first, then all of these other things are going to fall into place so much easier or so much more smoothly.
Yeah. So what happens then if you ignore that wake up call and you do nothing? What have you seen happen, especially with your clients or with yourself?
Yeah. Speaking personally, coming from my background in corporate sales, 9 to 5, that hustle life, in which I had a lot of success, but it was always at the expense of something else. It was at the expense of my relationships, at the expense of my health. And sitting in the doctor's office that day when I had that diagnosis, getting home 2 days after my honeymoon and thinking I was going in to get a prescription, to clear up a sinus infection I had had. And it was actually a cancer diagnosis that I got instead.
Gosh.
That was my wake up call. And that's when I realized that something had to change. I had to start doing things differently because I had been ignoring all of those little signs or the migraines I was dealing with all of the time, not taking good care of myself until it got bad enough that it was like, okay, hello, what else is it going to take to wake you up? And so that's why, in working with my clients, I tell them, you have got to start paying attention to the little cues, the little things that maybe are showing up in your body or that maybe you haven't been paying attention to because it will escalate at some point if you allow it to. And if you don't put a stop to it now, and then giving them the strategies and things to put in place to help with that, because that's what happened for me. I let it go way too far. And it did show up in terms of something very serious that it was like, okay, if you're not going to pay attention to all these little warning signs that I'm sending you, I'll just have to hit you over the head with a 2x4 because this is how it's going to have to be. So for me, I really take that to heart because it shouldn't have to get that bad.
Yeah. And you know what? Again, speaking from personal experience, I think what happens with us is that, especially when we were in our 20s and 30s and maybe even our 40s, we totally think we're invincible. Like the concept of cancer or chronic pain or any of that. It's like, that happens to old people. That's not us. Like I could do anything. And so we do set aside those little warning signs and cues until, it's shouting at us like, no, you cannot continue at this pace and level or something serious is going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah? Yes. 100%.
What kind of cancer did you get diagnosed with?
I had thyroid cancer and sitting there, the doctor, I tell this story and I'm like, it's almost like one of those scenes in a movie where all the voices are blurry. The actor's kind of lost in his own thoughts, like things are going on around them, but they're not processing any of it. And that's what it was for me because I was like, wait, how is this happening to me right now? Like you said, we think of ourselves as invincible and that nothing bad can happen to us until it does. And there I was, 25 years old, a newlywed, getting this diagnosis and just really, really like, wow, that's what put things in perspective, that life is short. Life is short. It's not a cliche. We don't know, other than the moment that's in front of us, what's next. And so that was a huge shift.
And I imagine it was a massive wake-up call for you of like, okay, well, I'm not invincible, so got to do something different and fast. So did you have to go through dialysis and chemo and things like that to overcome it?
Yep.
Talk to us about your process and journey through that.
Yes. So I was scheduled for surgery within less than a week of getting that diagnosis.
Wow.
Had my thyroid completely removed. The type of cancer that it was, there's a few different types of thyroid cancer. And typically one of the things you hear is that thyroid cancer is very easy, quote unquote, easy to treat. And in comparison with some of the other cancers, it can be. The type that I had was a much more aggressive form of cancer that they wanted to treat not only with surgery, but also with radiation, which carried possible risks of infertility and some other side effects. So there was just some big decisions we had to make in terms of the treatment plan and what that was going to look like, weighing out my age, the fact that I wanted to have a family one day, and just some hard decisions that we really had to make for my health going forward. So we chose to have the surgery, have my thyroid completely removed. I went through the radiation treatment as well, along with the risk of possible infertility, not knowing, if we'd be able to have kids one day, but also weighing out the benefits and saying, if this is what's going to help me preserve my life long term, then we're gonna do it. So that was really the first time in my life that I was ever forced to slow down and to stop and to just take a step back and to see things as they were. And that for me was a huge, huge awakening experience, because I got out of that whole treatment and recovery experience, I got so much that I didn't expect. I wanted to just get right back to it and get back to the things that were on my list and get back to this sense of feeling normal again, which for me was work 24/7 basically. But taking that time to slow down and to stop and to pull back taught me that anytime we're feeling stress and overwhelm, or anytime we're feeling on the verge of burnout in our life, or maybe experiencing burnout, the answer is to pull back. The key is to not let it be something external that stops you or that forces you to stop, right? Don't let it get that bad, but to be self-aware enough to know, okay, I'm experiencing these symptoms, stress, overwhelm, burnout, anxiety, etc. I need to pull back and see what needs to shift.
Yeah. And in my mind, I kind of think of it like you're a photographer, and sometimes you're zoomed into your work and you're like focusing on the details and all of the things. But sometimes you really do have to zoom out and give yourself that space to go, hang on. Okay, what is this working? Is it not? And what changes can be made? And so I think that that's also a very powerful metaphor, just because I think we get so zoomed in. We get so stuck in, well, this is how it is, and this is how it will always be. And that's not always the case.
Yes. And to even build on that metaphor a bit, sometimes we have to change the lens.
Yeah.
We're looking at it through this particular lens. Well, put on the wide angle lens, put on a different lens and see it even differently. Because like you said, we're so engrossed in whatever it is, so focused on the details or focused on just the beliefs that we don't even realize that maybe that's just a story we're telling ourselves, that we're justifying for the reason that things are the way they are. And it's not until we step back and zoom out and take that zoomed out look at my life, our lives. I tell my clients that all the time. We've got to zoom out because then when you're looking at it from that bird's eye view, you can see so much more.
Right.
Than you can when you're up close to it.
And I think also when I have felt overwhelmed in the past, and I think there's something also physiological to it where your threat system gets activated in your brain and in your heart, and that's where you start to catastrophize things like, how am I going to put food on the table next week? How am I going to pay for my rent? What happens if that client disappears? And you fall down that swirling, spiraling thoughts as well. And I think that when your brain does that, it's a trigger, right? It's that whole, like, you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger. Okay, got to get moving along. But the reality is there isn't a saber-toothed tiger chasing you right now, but you're still letting that threat system activate in your brain. So how do you pause in that moment?
Such a good question, because you're right. Stress is a natural response. It's that fight or flight, right? And whenever we're faced with a situation where we're feeling any sort of pressure, we have to make a decision, or like you said, the rent is due and how am I going to make ends meet, or whatever it might be, that fight or flight activates. And so that's, again, going back to this whole idea of starting to notice stress as a response to something else. And then taking that step back. No, it's about pulling back enough to know what are the steps I need to take whenever I find myself in this situation. So let's say you're in that high pressure situation and you've got decisions to make, and you're trying you feel just overwhelmed in that moment because you're not really sure what to do or what to turn next, or am I making the right decisions, and just all of this overwhelm. to know, okay, first of all, stress is a trigger. It's a response. Okay, now that I know that, what's the next step? Okay, the next step is to slow down, take a breath, zoom out. Okay, now that I've done this, then what's the next step? Is to kind of look at things more objectively, look at it from a different angle. And, in that moment, and a lot of times too, I don't know if you've noticed this, I certainly have, when you do take that step back, ideas come seemingly out of the blue, but you would have never thought about it had you not taken that step back.
Yeah.
So that third step then from there is first, notice the stress, notice the trigger. Second, step back. Third, explore the new ideas that might come in those moments and the new ideas that will come, and to say, okay, how can I approach this differently? Is there something different that I can do? Is there another way of looking at this that maybe I've just been too stuck in my own head to see up until now? And to explore that, and to say, okay, maybe there is a different path forward here. And like you said, to realize there's not actually a tiger chasing me, but it's just my physiological response to the pressure that I'm feeling. And start to get a little bit more attuned to that, aware of that, and notice that, and understand that that's what's going on. And that it's okay. You'll make it through. It's going to be all right.
Well, I think what I'm hearing you say, and sometimes you got to hear something a few times before it goes, bing, aha, it makes sense now. And I think what I'm hearing you say is just to acknowledge the fear that is underlying, acknowledge the stresses, the reaction, and that it's not the end all be all. It's like giving that space to say, oh, okay, well, I don't have to fall down the rabbit hole of this. Like, how can I respond differently in that moment? And then that opens and activates a different part of your brain so that you can start figuring out better solutions to overcome it, right?
Exactly. That's one thing I teach. I lead a 3-day mastermind retreat, and that is one of the first things that we touch on day one is it all starts with awareness. It all starts with awareness. The more aware you become and the more in tune you become, and like you said, acknowledge what is going on, then the better you're able to work through it. And there's this analogy, this story that I share. I said, it's kind of like this. Imagine you're sitting on the couch, right? And you want a glass of water. You are so thirsty. You need a drink so bad. You have two options. You can either stay on the couch and complain about how it's so difficult to get water because the glass is all the way in the kitchen and I just don't know what I'm going to do. And it's just that it's over there and I just want that water so bad, but I'm just stuck over here and I just don't know what to do. That's option one. Or option two is to just take a look at your surroundings and say, okay, where am I right now? I'm on the couch. What's the first step I need to take in order to go over and get that glass of water? I can't teleport over there to the cabinet and get the water out, get the glass out. It's not just going to magically appear. What's the first step? And slowing down enough to identify what that first step is. Well, I got to stand up, then move in the direction of the kitchen, then take the steps to get there, and so on, but it really is. It's acknowledging and owning where we are and giving ourselves grace in that moment too. Not beating ourselves up for where we are, not feeling guilty for where we are, not giving ourselves a hard time and saying, well, I should be here. If only I had done this, or all these guilt trips could go on. But just owning it, honoring ourselves in that space, and then just being proactive about it instead of reactive.
And I think that also it's just being aware of your pace. Because I think sometimes we fall into that trap of comparison of like, wow, Courtney's doing it so much faster than I'm doing it, blah, 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 right? Which slows you down even further from actually taking the next step forward. So talk to me about, I know through your teachings that you talk about 3 things that you need to reduce stress. And those are focus, clarity, and time. Can you take a deep dive into those and tell us why those are important?
Yes. So those are the 3 things that I hear people complain about most often, especially busy moms. If only I could focus more. If only I had more time. I never have enough time. If only I was clear, knew what I needed to be doing, then I would be successful. And so these are 3 things that I teach on so often because our beliefs as a society as a whole about these things, focus, clarity, time, are actually not necessarily what's true for you. And so what I encourage each person to do, everyone that's listening today, think about what focus means to you. Think about what clarity means to you. Think about what time means to you. And because in order to feel more focused, it's not about whether you are a focused person or not a focused person. Focus is not about being better organized. Focus is not about the things we make it out to be, right? Like, if only I had more focus. Focus is a practice. Just like yoga is a practice. Just like any type of discipline is a practice. Focus is a practice. So when you can start to shift your belief system around what focus is, and start to define what that is for you, then it becomes a whole lot easier to become more focused. Same thing with clarity. Clarity comes from within. You already know everything you need to know. It's within you. The right answers are there in your heart. It's just a matter of uncovering them.
Yeah.
Taking the time again to step back, to tune in, and to figure out what those steps forward, to own where it is that you are. I'm over here on the couch. I need some water. What's the first step? And to own that, to honor that, and to work from that place.
Yeah.
And same thing with time. We've got to start to shift our beliefs around time. Notice what you say about time. Notice, oh, I don't have enough time. Oh, there's always so much to get done. Oh, there's never enough time in a day. Whatever those things are, your words create your reality.
True.
So if we're saying, I don't have enough time to get it all done, well, then guess what situation you're going to find yourself in? That you don't have enough time to get it all done. So it's about rewriting that story and imagining a different option. Like, well, what if there were enough time to get it all done? What if the thing I was saying is, I have more time than I need? How would you look and how would you approach your life differently if that were the case?
Let me just put a pause right here, because I think this is really fascinating stuff. And only in the last couple of years have I started to play with the concept of time in my own life. And I'm telling you, this stuff is true. So the concept of time is always so interesting to me. Imagine you are painting a canvas. Like, I love to paint in my free time, right? And I go to this very sweet little painting class every Thursday in the nearby village with little 80-year-old women, right? So in that moment, it's 2 hours of my life. It's a blip in the whole grand scheme of everything. But I can tell you without a doubt, those 2 hours that I give myself as a gift every single week, they fill my tank up immeasurably. So it's fascinating to me. Whereas, previous Mary would say, oh, you don't have time for a painting class. You got a business to run. You got to do this. You got to do that, blah, 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 blah. But then when I started to carve out time and say, no, this is a gift I'm going to give myself that's going to nourish me. And I'm going to slot it in every Thursday. And I always know at the painting class, they take a break about an hour in for a cup of tea and some biscuits. I mean, it's the most delightful thing in the universe. I think it's really interesting to me when you say to yourself, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for the things that nourish me. Then that's a big message you're telling yourself. I don't have time to take care of you, Mary. So keep hustling, keep grinding, it's just not true.
Yes. So that is so true. That it's not true. It's amazing when we start to shift our perspective and start to notice. Again, it all starts with awareness. Start to become aware of what we're saying about our reality, because our language not only describes our reality, it creates it. And so, like you said, if I don't have enough time to do this, I don't have enough time, then you're never going to have enough time. So we've got to start looking at that differently. And I love what you did about penciling that in, putting that on your calendar and making that the priority and letting everything else build around it, as opposed to waiting to see, well, if I have a little extra time this week, then maybe I'll go to that painting class because that would be so nice. I would love to do that,
Right.
And because it never happens.
Right.
It never happens.
Right. And that's it. And so, I proactively set my calendar so clients cannot book time in with me between those certain hours on Thursdays. And I think that that's true. I also think what's fascinating about time, real quick, is when you get into flow state, you're doing something that you're really oh, I'm really super creative. It's just overflowing out of me. You lose the concept of time in that as well, and so you get so much done and you're like, where did the time go? Or, wow, I was able to do this thing so much faster than, I thought it would take. So again, if you're listening, I challenge you this week to plunk something into your calendar that really, truly will nourish you, even if you think you don't have the time for it. And then B, just, time blocking your tasks, because however much time you give to a thing is however much time you're going to spend. So instead of blocking out 4 hours, why not try 30 minutes and see how far you can get when you laser focus in?
Yes. It's so interesting, too, how we underestimate and overestimate time. Work will expand to fill the amount of time you give it. So think about that for a second. If you block off 2 hours for one task, guess what? It's going to take you 2 hours. But like you said, and I love your method that you use, Mary, of just the 7-minute timer.
Yes.
How quickly can I get this done? Still do a good job, obviously, put your best work forward, but how long is it really going to take me to do this? And I think oftentimes we overestimate the time it's going to take for our project. We think, I'm going to have to sit down. I'm going to need at least 3 hours to get that done so I can feel focused and get into that flow state.
Right.
When really we can get in and out of it very quickly. It doesn't take that long to just hop in, do it, get out of there, and check it off your list. And it's such a great feeling.
Yeah. Or do you go like, if I'm going to do this project, I got to run to Target. I got to get some organizational supplies. I got to get this and da-da-da-da-da. And you're like, oh my God. Okay, there's that day wasted.
Yes. The procrastination. It's like, just jump in and do it. Just do it.
Well, that is the thing about the 7-minute timer that I've found. I mean, I'm telling you, it cuts through the ish very quickly. And so you set that timer, you do one thing, you close down all of your windows, you turn your phone off, and you just laser focus in. The first 2 minutes are absolute trash because your brain is like swirling and going, I don't know if I can focus. And then the last 5 minutes, you're like, it was just this. And you write it down and all that. It gives you instant clarity for sure. So talk to us about this stress less system. What is this? Tell us more.
Yes. So, one of the things that I have noticed sorely lacking, especially in the online space, we've got so many digital courses, we've got so much information available to us at our fingertips. And one of the things after going through course after course and program after program, just for my own learning, on my own journey, different things I've wanted to learn, I've noticed that a lot of them lack two components. They usually either have one or the other. It's usually mindset or strategy. And what I found was lacking, and this is something that I've noticed just in working with clients over the years as well, something they complain about often, is that they need both. And we all know that it makes logical sense in running a successful business. There is going to be a mindset piece, and then there is going to be the how-to strategy piece. So why not bring that together into one so that you don't have to be like, well, okay, I've got to go get the mindset stuff over here and then the strategy piece over here and trying to like piece all the parts together. And how do I become successful? And oh my gosh, this is so stressful. So the whole stress less system was designed so that you could have success without the stress. So you could stress less and live more, as I love to say. And so really what it is, it's a process that it's a journey, right? Where we start is from within. We start to notice, okay, what are you feeling right now? The stress, the overwhelm, the anxiety, where is it coming from? And start to take a look at that. And really, that whole first step of the process is taking that zoomed out look, right? Slowing down enough to see where we are in our life. What is the reality? And then we can begin to move forward. Because the reason we start here as well is that so often I see clients that are in that state of overwhelm and they're like, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do to fix it. I just want to get out of this boiling water as fast as possible because it's uncomfortable and I don't like feeling this way. And most of the clients that I work with are also the very high achieving, driven, motivated type A women who are just ready to check it off their list to move on to the next thing. And so I lump myself into that. I am totally that way. Because we're always just ready to get to the next thing. And what do I need to do? And how do I solve this? We don't take that. It's not natural to us to take that step back, and to just slow down for a minute. So we start there because otherwise the strategy piece is going to be like throwing spaghetti at the wall. If we started with strategy and the how-to, it's going to be like, okay, let's try this. And we're not going to know what's going to stick. So that's why we start there, starting from within and starting with the mindset piece, getting our mindset right first. Then we move into the how-to and the strategy. And that's where we go into the remaining steps of the system, which is dream it, define it, map it, and do it. First, you've got to dream it, right? what would my life look like if I had just unlimited time? What does balance feel like for me? What does it feel and look like to have clarity and to know what steps forward? Where am I going? What is my overall vision?
Yeah.
What is my mission? What have I been put on this earth to do? So we spend some time there just dreaming it, getting back in touch with that, then defining it. So, okay, if this is what my vision is and this is what my mission is and my calling, then how am I defining this? How am I actually rewriting the story around this in my life, right? Instead of, I don't have enough time, what does it look like? Instead of, oh, I can't find balance. Well, what does balance look like? Getting really clear on that. Then it's a matter of mapping it out and actually putting these dreams and these definitions on the calendar and systems and strategies in place to time block and to get things done in an orderly fashion. So it doesn't just feel like you're jumping from one thing to the next all day long.
Yeah.
And then executing the plan, because once you have the plan in place, that's it. You just have to run it. So it really is both. It's the strategy piece and the mindset piece, because they work so well together and because you can't have one without the other. And an orderly system to map it all out. And so that way you have that clear plan. You can stay more focused and actually execute it, because running a profitable business doesn't have to be stressful. It can be if you want it to be, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And I think that that's it. Like, I think we forget, as little goldfish and goldfish bowls, with our 8 seconds of memory, we forget that we have the power to choose every single day in every single aspect of our life. Even the things where we feel powerless, we still have the ability to choose how we react to that situation. And I think what happens, and I love this, I mean, it's so simple, it's brilliant, it's great. I think what happens to a lot of us is we're all good at dreaming, where some of us are good at defining, and we're not very good at mapping it out or doing it. So it's like we get really motivated, we get really jazzed, and we're like, yes, I know what I want. Now I know this is what I want to feel, and And then it's when it comes time to actually take that bold step forward every single day, that's where it all falls apart, right?
Yes. Yep, because that's the test of discipline. That's when that proverbial rubber meets the road. Are you going to carry out and have that integrity to have your actions align with your word?
Yeah. Yeah. You know? And I imagine also, I mean, I'm thinking through this, it's probably a cyclical cycle of coming back to your dream it phase and defining it phase and mapping it and, just constantly going back and forth with that flow. Yeah, because I imagine over time you also change, right?
Yes. Yep. And embracing that process. That was one area in my life where I made such a mistake in the past, was being too rigid and thinking, okay, once I do this once, then it's done forever. I don't ever want to revisit it again. I want to just have it checked off my list forever. And I would get frustrated whenever, a couple of years would go by, things would change, things would shift. And I'm like, here I am revisiting my values again. I've already done this values work. Why am I doing this again? And I would go through a program or something. But it was so interesting to notice how much things had actually changed over time. And so then I just started to lean into that and say, okay, leaning into the resistance, to be specific. Like, okay, why am I resisting this, doing this over? How could I look at this differently? And realizing that, okay, no, this is a process. This is a journey. This is going to shift and change as I grow and shift and change. And so becoming excited to revisit it in a couple of years. My husband and I have implemented this every year. He and I sit down at the end of the year and write out our family vision statement for the year ahead. And then we revisit it once a quarter. We sit down over a cup of coffee or we go out for dinner and we bring our vision statement. It's in a leather-bound journal. We have written it out. We bring it with us and we read it. And we take turns reading the different sections. And it is amazing what has happened in our life since we've started doing this. And now I look forward to doing that every year. Whereas before I would have been like, nope, once done. I don't want to do it again. But having leaned into this and realizing that, no, it is a process and a journey and that's okay. And now it's become exciting and fun and just having, like you said, you get all jazzed up about it and it just keeps that feeling, that good feeling of what you're working towards very present in your life.
And I love that. I love how you apply that simple principle of a family vision statement to your personal life. Because, I mean, some of us, we do it in our work life and, we get clear and we do it and check in quarterly. But I do love how you can apply that to your home life and just check in with like where you're at with your partner, with your kids. You know, when your kid becomes old enough to start having a voice in that conversation, boy, howdy, it changes everything. The dynamic changes, but it also becomes richer because then you can course correct if things are going off or your spouse needs a little bit more of this. And so your ambitions and things need to kind of change to flow so that you're not going in two separate directions. I love that. It's great.
Yes. It has been a game changer for our family.
Yeah.
And just like you said, hearing you say that about my son, you know, when he does get to be part of that conversation as he's older, like, oh, I almost just got chills. Like that is so exciting to me.
Yeah.
Because not only is it he adding richness to us and to our family vision, it's also going to be teaching him to dream and teaching him that process.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love
beautiful.
it. And, you know, I mean, I think, again, that's where I would highly recommend for you guys, definitely click on the links in our show notes below to connect with Courtney and her team, because I think this is where sometimes we falter, is how to put systems and processes in place to manage it all, to save time, to regain energy in your business and your life, because I think this is the key. And I think you're absolutely dead on. It's not like stress is a to-do list and you're like, tick, completed that. You know, it's not the truth, but like there is something to having accountability in place, whether it's with a business coach or your teammates or otherwise, having those systems and processes in place to track your progress, you know, and to track, well, we didn't quite hit the mark there. So what are we going to do now? You know, what did we learn from that situation? I think that's critical. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Because if you can't track it, you can't hack it. This is I picked that up in the biohacking world, you know, back when I was doing the ketogenic diet, all of these things.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, you have to track your progress. Because if you're not tracking it, you're not going to know where you are. Where do you stand at any given moment? Mm-hmm. And that's just smart business sense, but it's also smart life sense as well. Because otherwise we just kind of float aimlessly through life wherever the wind takes us, and we react instead of being proactive and actually leading our life where we would like to see it, where we would like for it to go.
Doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. It's going to be messy. You're going to have curveballs. You know, things are going to happen. Aging parents are going to be part of your life. Cancer might knock on your door. You know, things are going to happen. But it sounds like when you've got that process in place, at least you've got a framework that you're not completely like, flattened.
Yes, and you can always come back to it, which is why even in my own life, when I do encounter stressful situations or more high pressure periods of time than others, you know, and 1 month in particular, like for a launch month, of course, it's going to be a little bit more on the plate than usual. But having those systems and strategies in place to fall back on make all the difference, because then you don't feel like you're just out there flailing in the water. You actually feel like, okay, wait, let me go back to the manual. What are the strokes? Oh, yeah, this is how I need to swim. Okay, one arm, then the other. And you know the process for getting through it. Yeah. And you can work your way through it.
Yeah, and it sounds like with a bit of grace and a bit of discipline, you'll get there. So let me ask you this question. Based on all of the things that we've just talked about, Courtney, can we as women truly have it all at once in life or not?
Oh, such a good question. Such a good question. So many ways to answer too. My gut on that is yes, because your life is how you define it. And when you can get present to that, and when you can tap in to where you are at any given moment and what's actually important to you, then you can create the life you truly want to live. And so I look at that. Is it going to be perfect? No, that's the key piece to remember. Perfection on this earth does not exist. But what does exist is your choice to rewrite the story, rewrite the way you've been looking at things, and start to go after the life you truly want so that you can have it all and so that you can have the life that you dream of. It is possible.
And I think to build on that, I think it may require you to redefine what having it all is. Where I know when I was in my 20s, I thought the corner office, the giant house, the this, the that was what success meant. But, now I'm in my early 40s, very early 40s, let's just be real, is to know that those things don't matter to me or my family. Defining success or winning or any of that is so much less in a whole grand scheme of things. But it doesn't mean that I don't get what really, truly brings me deep contentment. So I think having it all at once, there are certain leaps that you have to make to get your mind in the right place to understand what's most important, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Couldn't have said it better. I agree.
So, Courtney, we can find you online at CourtneyElmer.com, and you hang out on Instagram the most?
Yes, I love Instagram. I'm over there all the time. I'm on Facebook too, but Instagram, my handle is @CourtneyElmer_.
Great. And again, I'll put those links down in the show notes. And I know you also have a couple of very exciting things coming up. First and foremost, if you go to her website, she's got the productivity quiz, which helps you discover what your productivity personality is and just, get a little bit more insight and clarity there. Also, I heard that you're doing a live training webinar on February 21st, and it's the 3 massive mistakes even smart mompreneurs make that keep them stuck, stressed, and spinning their wheels. Is that right?
Yes, we are going to be diving deep into those mistakes, and I'll be giving you a game plan. If you attend that free masterclass, come join me. You'll walk away with a game plan to avoid those mistakes, and that if they ever do try to sneak back into your life, you'll know what to do. You'll have that system in place that you can fall back on.
And the brilliant part is it's a webinar, so it could be running in the background while you're out with the kids at home or doing whatever that you can have running, so you don't have to, go somewhere to an event. You can easily consume this right in the comforts of your home. So yeah, definitely check that out. Okay, so a few questions I like to ask our guests on every episode are these. So Courtney, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or maybe poking holes and challenging your belief system right now?
That's a tough question for me because I love to read. My shelves are overflowing with so many good books, but one that stands out that I come back to time and time and time and time again, if I could just finish reading it again, is called One Beautiful Dream. It's by an author by the name of Jennifer Fulwiler, and she is a mother of 6. She's an author. She hosts a host of her own radio show and just some different business ventures that she has. She's a comedian. She's hilarious. And she tells the story of what it's like to be a mom running a business from a real, true perspective. Not all the glitz and glamour. Oh, no. You get the behind-the-scenes look into her family. And the way she tells it, she's just got a gift. She's hilarious. And every time I read that book, it just gives me this light and hopeful feeling to know that, we're all just out there building our dreams day by day. That's what it's about. It's not about, all the things the world says, equal success or whatever that might be. But she really kind of brings back the heart of it, as to why we do what we do. And so I highly recommend that, especially if you're, woman-owned business, moms in particular. Yeah. Oh, such a good one.
Good. Well, we'll put a link in the show notes for that book. Are there any good apps that you're using right now in your own life that's helping you simplify either, how you post on Instagram or otherwise?
Oh, good question. Yeah, Instagram, I like the app Later. That one has been, it's invaluable for me because I can plan posts out in advance. But I also have the flexibility that when it is time for that post to go up that day, I can edit it, I can modify it, if there's something that's more relevant going on in my life, even though it's something I might have planned a couple weeks ago, I can switch it out. And that has been a time saver because, in social media, when it comes to marketing your business, consistency is so key. Yeah. And in the course of our day-to-day life, we can have the best of intentions, but if we don't have a plan to execute on those intentions, then those intentions are just going to stay that intentions. So having, apps like that Later has been my personal favorite for scheduling things out in advance and to make sure you're always consistently sharing your brand that's been a great one.
Great. Yeah. I remember one of the first videos I watched of you when we first got connected on Instagram. You're like, I've got my kid. We're at the park. We're just going to talk about some things. And then all of a sudden it started raining.
I remember that.
And I was like, well, look at her. She's, it's an Instagram live. She can't stop the rain, right? This is a perfect example of being nimble and flexible with what life throws at you. And you could have freaked out, but you didn't. So kudos to you.
Oh, well, thank you. I remember that too. I still have that video, I think, in my camera roll. And I was going back through cleaning stuff up. I'm like, oh man, I remember when that happened.
Girl put the baby back into the car. She finished the video in, the front driver's seat in parking. It's like hilarious. So I love it. These are the things, you guys. Slow and sure. It doesn't have to be perfect.
That's it.
So Courtney, tell us, who's one person either in your circle or network, that you feel is up to brilliant things in the world and that you think we should interview on the Simplifiers podcast, and why?
Oh, that's an easy one. So she's a dear friend of mine. She also happens to be my neighbor. We connected, though, the way we met. We didn't know we lived on the same street. No. We met in a Facebook group. And it was like this group full of people from all over the world. And she and I happen to live on the same street. Crazy, but we have become dear friends since then. And she is a jewelry designer. She's a philanthropist, and she's a single mom to a little 3-year-old, or maybe now 4-year-old son. She lost her husband to cancer a few years back, and she just has an extremely powerful story, yet she hasn't let it stop her. She has used that as part of her mission and as part of why she does the work she does in the world, and in giving back to cancer research and helping families who are experiencing the burden of cancer.
Wow. And
so, of course, her story resonates so much with me and with my own journey, and how, our experiences just kind of, we feel like we've been meant to meet and to just become friends based on both of our experiences in our life. And she's just doing amazing things. So look her up. You can find her on Instagram too, Crystal and Oakland Jewelry. She's
Crystal and Oakland Jewelry. Is that it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I can give that to you to put in the show notes as well if you'd like.
Perfect. Yeah, we definitely want to connect with her. So in my mind, gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell us, what's one thing you're grateful for right now, Courtney?
I am just grateful. It's so easy to say family or different things, but I'm just grateful for the moment that I have in front of me. Mm-hmm. Truly. Because when I pause and just think about it, that's really all I have, is that moment in front of me, whatever that moment might be filled with. Right now, it's filled with an amazing conversation with you. In a few moments, it'll be filled with going, maybe pour a cup of coffee and chat with my husband, who's in the other room. I hear him washing dishes. But whatever that moment is, I'm just so grateful for that. And that's something I teach my clients as well, is when you can pull and park for a moment and then just give gratitude to whatever's in front of you right now, that is really where happiness starts to come from. It comes from within. You just pull in and just be present in that moment and give gratitude for whatever's right there.
So Courtney, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I think the work that you're doing is incredibly important, especially for those moms out there that are running small businesses. I mean, this is the message to help slow down, take a pause, and reshift your focus. So keep going. You're 100% bringing light and radiance out into the world. So I see what you're doing. It's great.
Oh, thank you, Mary.
My final question for you today is this. So someone somewhere is listening to this podcast and she's feeling it. She is in the thick of some major thing that is happening in her life, some big crisis that's giving her a lot of stress and feeling overwhelmed. What's one thing that you could whisper into her ear alone right now to encourage her?
You're enough, and you've got this. You have everything within you that you need to handle this, whatever it might be, and you will get through it. You will get through it. Tap into your power because it's already within you.
Courtney, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Mary, for having me.